All right. Leave off. I think we left off. Oh yeah, we're on the DOM. Okay. Lewis, can you read this one?
Give me a second, let me get there. Changing elements, all right, right?
Creating elements, yeah.
Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Give me
Let me make sure that's
creating elements. Use the following methods to create new nodes.
Yeah.
Element dot clone node clones an element and returns the resulting node. Document dot create element creates a new element node. Document dot create text node creates a new text node. This will create a new text node, but it will not appear in the document until you append it to an existing element with one of the following methods. Element.append child new node adds a new child node to an element as the last child node. Element.insert before node 1, node 2 inserts node 1 as a child before node 2. And this creates a new paragraph and adds it to the existing div element on the page.
all right. So we'll go ahead and run that. So we run that and we've got, we did our create element. Oh, well, first let's look at the HTML, right? So the HTML, all it says is some content in there, right? But then we've done document create element P, and then node document create text node, some new text, and then we've appended to this P that we created the node that we created up here. So it inserted this text, and then doing div append child P, inserting the P into that div. So there you go. All right. Oh, dang it. Okay, well, here's the answer for this one.
That's what I was gonna say.
Good. So create element by ID, and then append child. Or get element by ID and append child. All right. Jacob, can you read this one?
Removing elements. To remove an HTML element, you must select the paragraph of the element and use the remove child node method. For example, this removes the paragraph with the ID P1 from the page. An alternative way of achieving the same result would be the use of the parent node property to get the parent of the element we want to remove. Var child equals document dot get element by ID P1 child dot parent node dot remove child.
Okay, so let's see that in action. So over here we've got P1 and P2. This is a paragraph. This is another paragraph. And then we do parent get document or get element by ID, which we went over yesterday, which is what you're going to be using the vast majority of the time. So we've got the parent, and remember, so like, okay, well, there's the document and then HTML, and HTML has the children head and body, and so then body has the child div, and then so this div has two children parent, right? Just a quick recap of like the DOM, right? So we're getting the parent. So we're doing get element by ID demo, and then child get element by ID P1 so that we got this P1, and then parent dot parent, which is this variable right here, dot remove child child. So does that make sense to y'all, or any questions on that?
So it makes sense to me as far as the syntax and what it does. However, I don't really understand the use case versus like removing the HTML element yourself. What would be the purpose of it?
Right. Like if you just wanted, so let's say when the user clicks a button, right, and you want it to then change the page, right, and you want to either add new stuff, remove some stuff, and tweak the page because they've like clicked the button. Well, you just doing it yourself can't do that. Like the whole point of like JavaScript is to like do stuff programmatically to make things interactive, right? So like with the click a button example, like that makes it, more interactive, and
That already makes it completely, that makes perfect sense. I didn't put those two together in my head, but that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, okay, cool. And another way you could do that too is instead of just deleting the element, which is more often what we do, is you just change the display. So you change like display to none. Is it none or hidden? I think it's hidden. Well, anyway, when we were doing CSS and we covered like the visibility and like changing the visibility and changing, display so that
Breakpoints and all that. Yeah.
anything, and like the difference between like one still held this place for it and the other didn't. Well, if you just change the display, it does the same thing, so it's easier than just deleting the element altogether. But maybe you need to do that to delete it for some reason. I usually just hide things, and that works the same. All right. Oh, dang it, I did it again. Okay, drag and drop from the options below to remove the node element from the page. Par is node's parent, so par get element by ID par, node document get element by ID node, and then par remove child node. So there you go. Lewis, can you read this one? Oh wait, didn't you already read?
I just did, yeah.
Oh, okay. Mike, can you read?
Yeah. Replacing elements. To replace an HTML element, the element dot replace child, either with new node, old node method is used. The code above creates a new paragraph element that replaces the existing P1 paragraph.
Okay. So we'll do the same thing. When we run this, so it started with this is a paragraph, this is another paragraph. But what we did is we did append child, and we added this new paragraph that we created with the text, this is new. And then we did replace child down here. We got the parent right here, and we got the child P1, which is already there, and we did replace. So it took this is a paragraph and replaced it with this is new. Does that make sense? Do y'all see how that works? Any questions? Nope. Okay. Take a second and answer the next question. Okay. Which method is used to replace nodes, replace child? Samantha, can you read this one?
Now that we know how to select and change DOM elements, we can create a simple animation. Let's create a simple HTML page with a box element that will be animated using JavaScript. Our box element is inside a container element. Note the position attribute used for the elements. The container is relative and the box is absolute. This will allow us to create the animation relative to the container. We will be animating the red box to make it move to the right side of the container. You need to be familiar with CSS to better understand the code provided.
Okay, so run that and it doesn't really do anything. All right, we're probably doing it in the next one. Oh, dang it. To create an animation relative to container, the position attribute for the container should be set to relative. And here you go. Jacob, did you already read?
I did, but I can read again.
No, it's fine. Brian, can you read this?
Animations. To create an animation, we need to change the properties of an element at small intervals of time. We can achieve this by using setInterval method, which allows us to create a timer and call a function to change properties repeatedly to define the intervals in milliseconds. This code creates a timer that calls a move function every 500 milliseconds. Now we need to define the move function that changes the position of the box. Move function increments the left property of the box element by 1 each time it's called.
Okay, take a second and answer the next question. Okay, what's the interval for this timer? 10,000, which is going to be 10 seconds. Sandra, can you read this one?
Animations. The following code defines a timer that calls the move function every 10 milliseconds. However, this makes our box move to the right forever. To stop the animation when the box reaches the end of the container, we add a symbol check to the move function and use the clear interval method to stop the timer. When the left attribute at the box reaches the value of 150, the box reached the end of the container based on the container width of 200 and a box width of 50. The final code. Congratulations, you have just created your first JavaScript animation. Thank you very much.
All right, so now we'll run that and you can see it moves the little red box to the right. Any questions on that? So basically we're just changing, so we're taking our current position and we're just increasing it by 1 and we're setting the style to left to move it, adding more to the left, which the more numbers there are to the left is the further it moves to the right. So make sense? Okay. Take a second and answer next question.
Hey, Brandon, one more fun question for you.
Yeah, what's
If
up?
if we're setting the movement distance, so for example, in the one they gave us,
Uh-huh.
shit, I gotta go. Well, I can look at your screen. If you're setting set interval move, that just is the 10.
So 1,000 is gonna be a
10 seconds.
no, 1,000's 1 second, 10,000's 10 seconds. So every 1,000 is a second, right? So that's like 1% of a second, right? Basically is, so whatever that is, 10 millis, it's every 10 milliseconds it's going to move it 1, right? Because our starting position is left 0,
And that's 1 pix.
Yeah. Whoa.
Okay.
Wait, say that again. Yeah, it's
That's 1 pixel.
right. It's moving it 1 pixel because we're taking position, because we set this variable position, right? Because so it just be like, okay, you don't need to define this when it's 0, but it's like saying left right here 0 pixels, because it's 0 from the left, which just keeps it there. But by default it's already going to be 0 from the left, just by not setting it, right? Because that's just where it naturally lands.
Shows up, yeah.
Yeah. So it's as if we had this and then we're saying box.style.left, so this right here, plus we did plus equals 1 on position, so now this is 1, right, every 10 milliseconds. And so then then this is 1 every for 10 milliseconds, and then 2, and so on and so forth, right?
For a total of 150 pixels.
What's the width of this? Well, this is 200 pixels width.
Okay.
So it does it for, it moves it over. Okay, well, no. Yes, this is 200 pixels, but this is 50 pixels. So yes,
Because the box is 50. Yeah.
right. So yeah, you are correct.
Well,
and then once it gets to 150, then we do clear interval, because we did this set interval. So it's saying every 10 seconds remember, I don't know if you remember, but when we went over intervals, we talked about you have to, if you set an interval, it's going to go forever unless you do clear interval, right? It'll just keep ticking indefinitely every time it reaches that time thing. So then by calling this clear interval and passing in t, this variable that we'd set right here, it stops it. So does that make sense?
It does. Do you need to use the else portion of this function if you know you're only going 150? Because
yes,
I mean, if you set it to equal to 150 clear interval, wouldn't that just stop it at 150 by itself?
So like you're saying, if we did 2 ifs,
if you do an if statement, do you have to put an else statement in there as well?
No. You don't have to do an else. Well, unless you've done an elif. If you've done a sorry, elif is Python. It's else if in JavaScript. But if you've done an else if, you have to do an else at the end. But no, if you do an if, you can do just a if. But the problem is, the reason why it was better to do the else there is once it gets to 150, sure, it clears interval and doesn't call it again, but it still would have moved it over 1 more. So it would have been 1 little bit outside. Here, we'll just run it. I don't know if we'll be able to see it, but it's not even letting it run it. Well, it really wants its else. Oh, duh, I just put if and I didn't have any kind of,
Parentheses.
yeah, I didn't have any statement here. So like if I just put true here, then it would do it. But see how it's just a little bit one over.
And what causes that one over? I still don't get that.
Well, because we have to always call this state. So it's because we did if true, which is like just saying do it every time, right? But it reaches its 150, it stops doing the set interval, so it stops doing it, but since it's still done it, it calls this one more time. So like the purpose of doing else is what like saved us from having to do, if true. So that it just always does it, right? So it's like, okay, if this statement is not true, then do this. So that was the purpose of the else.
If you
Okay,
switch the if statement and the else statement positions and you went back to if true, that would stop it from going that extra pixel, right?
Say that again. So if we did like, okay,
If you did their if true on the second one and they're replacing else, and then you take and you switch the place of the if statements, so it wouldn't run the if true again after it clears interval. That should stop it from going the extra pixel, right?
no, that would still go one pixel because it's always going to call this if true. And here, watch, we'll show you. It's maybe not.
Because it stopped the clear interval at 150.
Oh yeah.
So then it shouldn't go back up to the top.
Okay, I wasn't tracking what you were saying, but yeah. So there you go. You could do that too.
Okay.
And if so if we have the if statement, you said we don't have to have an else. If there was no else statement at the bottom and we ran it, wouldn't it still stop it moving 150? I guess I don't understand the need for the else if the if statement is saying if it's equal to 150 to stop. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
It's saying if it's 150 stop, but by having this else, it's saying if it's not okay. So we start at position 0, right? So the position starts at 0, and so it comes to this. It says, is position greater than 150? Well, no, it's not. So it's saying, okay, move it over by 1 pixel.
Oh, if we didn't have the else statement there, it doesn't know.
It doesn't do anything.
It wouldn't know the increments. It wouldn't know okay.
Right. Yeah, it would stop, but it would I mean, it would stop at that 150, but then it would never do this stuff. So it would never do anything.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay. All right. Wait, let's see if there is an. Oh, damn it. There was. Okay. Which function is used to stop set interval timer, clear interval? Mark, can you read this one?
Events. You can write JavaScript code that execute when an event occurs, such as when a user clicks the HTML element, moves the mouse, or submits a form. When an event occurs on a target element, a handler function is executed. Common HTML events include onClick, occurs when the user clicks on the element. Onload occurs when the object has loaded. On unload occurs once a page has unloaded for a body. On change occurs when the content of an formed element selection or the check state has changed. On mouse over occurs when the pointer is moved into an element or onto one of its children's. On mouse out occurs when a user moves the mouse pointer out of the element or out of one of its children. On mouse down occurs when the user presses a mouse button over an element. On mouse up occurs when the user releases a mouse button over an element. On blur occurs when an element loses functions. On focus occurs when the element gets focused. Corresponding events can be added to HTML elements as attributes. For example, open P on click equals some function bracket some text closing P.
Okay. So of all this, it's good that on click is at the top because this is what you're going to use the most. So like when you have people click buttons or even like do check boxes or whatever, when you have them do something, then it activates your JavaScript code to then do something. But it's good to know all these as well. So
Is something like mouse out where it says like when the user moves the mouse pointer out of an element, is that like how they do like maybe an exit intent pop-up? They can like say as you move your mouse out of the body area of the page to go click out, that's when that pop-up shows up. How do they know those? How do exit intent pop-ups know when are they using something like that?
When you're closing the tab, you mean?
Yeah, you're at a website and you go to just bounce out of it, like click out of it, and then a pop-up will show up. They're called like exit intent pop-ups. I use them on my websites for SEO purposes, but or for marketing purposes. But what about in the code of a site? Is it something like that, like a mouse out?
Yes, kind of. I'll get you more details on it, but
That's all right.
yes,
I'm just
kind
curious.
of. Oh, okay. All right, we'll go ahead and do the next question. Okay. The type of function that executes when an event occurs is called an event handler. Peter, can you read this one?
Yeah. What's that I had over there? Handling events, they just let a LED pop up when the user clicks a specified button. Event handlers can be assigned to elements. For example, you can attach events to almost all HTML elements.
Okay. So as you see on this one, like I was just talking about with the on click, so you create a button and then on click, then it executes some form of code. In this case, all it does is do a little alert, but you can have it do a lot more. I mean, you can have it do whatever you want. A lot of times if you're building a page that you don't want it to take to a new page, but you want to get information from another page to update your current page, then you do something like that, on click, and then it goes and sends a post request to get stuff. And, so or just like it was talking about with animations or whatever, if you want it to like do something or whatnot when they click a button, especially with like JavaScript games. We're not going to cover JavaScript games, But you know, things like that are like when you would use that. All right, so let's move on to the next question.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have to answer it, Peter. Just everybody answers it themselves, and then I move on to it.
Yeah, but nobody's clicking continue.
Oh, I know. I wait until you guys move on your
Oh, okay.
learn.
Got
That way I
got
don't
it.
just give away the answer.
Got it. All right.
Okay. So fill in the blanks to call the function when the button is clicked. On click equals function. Mike, can you read this one?
Yeah. Which one are we on? I was moving ahead. I'm sorry.
The events on load.
Onload. The onload and on unload events are triggered when the user enters or leaves the page. These can be useful when performing actions after the page is loaded. Similarly, the window.onload event can be used to run code after the whole page is loaded. The onChange event is mostly used on text boxes. The event handler gets called when the text inside the text box changes and the focus is lost from the element. It's important to understand events because they're an essential part of dynamic web pages.
Okay, so here's your on unload you were talking about there, Mike. That's what you were referencing, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. So let's do this. Well, all this is doing is
When you
bring it to uppercase.
yeah, it changes everything to all.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was just saying it moves everything to all caps once you click on the text.
Yeah. And then deletes it for some reason. All right. And go ahead and answer the next question. Drag and drop the options below to call the clear function after the body is loaded. On load, clear. Sandra, can you read this one?
Event listeners, the add event listener method attaches an event handler to an element without overriding existing event handlers. You can add many event handlers to one element. You can also add many event handlers of the same type to one element, i.e. 2 clicks events. The first parameter is the event type, like click or mouse down. The second parameter is the function we want to call when the event occurs. The third parameter is a Boolean value specifying whether to use event bubbling or event capturing. Oh my God. This parameter is optional and will be described in the next lesson. Note that you don't use the on or this on prefix for the event, use click instead of on click. Example. This adds 2 event listeners to the element. We can remove one of the listeners. Example, let's create an event handler that removes itself after being executed. Example. After clicking the button, an alert with a random number displays and the event listeners is removed. Internet Explorer version 8 and lower do not support add event listeners and removes event listeners method. However, you can use the document attach event methods to attach event handlers in the Internet Explorer.
Okay, so run this one and gives us a random number. So event listers are definitely important. You'll use them more with jQuery once we get to jQuery, which is what we covered next. And jQuery is really just a way of doing JavaScript, but like with shorthand. But jQuery, people when they're using jQuery love to do event listeners. So yeah. All right, go ahead and answer the question. Okay. Can multiple event handlers be added to a single element? Yes. Mark, can you read this one?
Event propagation. There are two ways for an event propagation in the HTML, DOM, bubbling, and capturing. Event propagation allows the definition of an element order when an event occurs. If you have a P element inside a div element and the user clicks the P element, which element clicks event should be handled first. In bubbling, the innermost element event is handled first, and then the outer element is handled. The P element clicks events is hand first, followed by the div element click event. In capturing, the outermost element event is handled first, and then the inner. The div element clicks event is handled first, followed by the P element clicked event. Capture goes down the dome, bubble goes up the dome.
All right, so go ahead and answer the question. Okay, a paragraph is inside a div. You want the paragraph's click event to be handled first. You should use bubbling. Kevin, can you read this one?
Capturing versus bubbling. The add event listener method allows you to specify the propagation type with the use capture parameter. The default value is false, which means the bubbling propagation is used. When the value is set to true, the event uses capturing propagation. This is particularly useful when you have the same event handled for multiple elements in the DOM hierarchy.
Okay. Go ahead and answer the next question. So drag and drop the options below to handle the click event and use capturing propagation. So add event listener click function true. Okay. All right. Not too much longer and we'll be done with JavaScript. So there's not too much on this one. Peter, can you read this one?
image slider. Now we can create a simple image slider project. The images will be changed using next and previous buttons. Now let's create our HTML, which includes an image and the 2 navigation buttons. Now let's define our sample images in an array. For our images, Sololearn. We are going to use 3 sample images that we have uploaded to our server. You can use any number of images.
Okay. So, oh, they haven't done it yet. So we'll get there. All right, answer the next question. Okay, so var, and for our array, you always use brackets for your array or list in Python. And Samantha, can you read this one?
Image slider. Now we need to handle the next and previous button clicks and call the corresponding functions to change the image. HTML code, JS code. The num variable holds the current image. The next and the previous button clicks are handled by their corresponding functions, which change the source of the image to the next / previous image in the array. We have created a functioning image slider.
All right, so let's run this. So now when we click it, it changes the pictures. Something to consider too, you can also use a set interval so people don't have to click, so that when it goes on the page, it just automatically cycles through different pictures every few seconds. So any questions on how this works? I can go through it and explain if need be. Nope. Okay. So answer next question. All right, what will be the content of the paragraph after the user clicks on it twice? So we've got our paragraph, and we have the on-click test in there, and this test function gets the document by ID, and then change it is the gets the inner HTML of this and makes it equal n divided by 2. So the first time we click it, divides, becomes 10, click it again, and it becomes 5. Form validation. Now this is what y'all will be doing with your JavaScript for your web page, because you're going to want to create a contact me page, and you'll learn how to process that and everything with Python, but you're going to need to create a contact me page and a login page and stuff. And so for that HTML form, you're going to want to validate your form. So and you can also validate forms on the back end with Python, but then they get to the next page and then they have to go back, or you have to reload the stuff from the next page and they had to re-enter it or whatever. And it's just easier to do it with JavaScript. So Jacob, can you read this one?
Form validation. HTML5 adds some attributes that allow form validation. For example, the required attribute can be added to an input field to make it mandatory to fill in. More complex form validation can be done using JavaScript. The form element has an onSubmit event that can be handled to perform validation. For example, let's create a form with 2 inputs and 1 button. The text in both fields should be the same and not blank to pass the validation. For example, now we need to define the validate function. We return true only when the values are not blank and are equal. With form will not get submitted if onSubmit event returns false.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and run this. We'll do 5 and 6 and hit submit. Value should be equal and not blank. Okay, so now we make it 5 and 5. And we get no issues. So and you can see and all you have to do is in the form on submit, then, and you can also do on click and pass it in your input, type submit. But anyway, on submit, return, validate, and so it just calls this function and then does that. So yeah, any questions on that? Oh, looks like somebody's hands up. What's up, Jacob?
Is this something that you would use for like, say, like a password check for repeating your password?
Yes, for repeating your password, yes. And then also, like, let's say you want them to make a password that's, so many numbers and so many characters and blah, 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 right? You could use it for something like that. You could use it to make sure, okay, you could just set your form type to input type tell or even input type number for like phone numbers, but like if you want to make sure they're actually entering a phone number, not just typing some words or something, right? You could validate it to make sure that the phone number is phone number and just other things like that. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a call I have to take. One sec. Huh. I got disconnected, but they might call back. Sorry about that. Sorry. What were you saying, Jacob?
Oh, it was more of the application, and you covered it. I was asking, is that something that you would use for like confirming your password, or like you said, confirming phone numbers to make sure the information is correct and all that? So
Yeah, and like let's say you're building a site for a company, right? And the company only wants you to allow emails that are like them to create an account with their company email or something, right? You could make sure that at, you know, whatever.com is that company's email. Now by simply putting email, it makes sure that it has the @ somewhere in it, but anything beyond that you would have to do with JavaScript. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, go ahead and answer the next question. Okay, the form will submit to its action if on submit returns true. So if it gets false, it's not going to do that. And when I say you'll be using form validation, that's not the only thing you could use JavaScript for your resume website. Like if you wanted to add like animation or something, or I don't know, anything else you could think of, feel free to definitely add it. But you should at least be adding form validation. So okay. All right, well, you got the first one free. Fill in the blanks to change the content of all paragraph tags to the page Sololearn. On the page to Sololearn. So document get element by tag name, and then we get P, and then remember that returns an array. So we have to iterate through that array. So we just do a basic for loop with, you know, x equals 0, and while x is less than the length of the array that it returns, then x plus plus. So once it's done, it's going to increase x by 1. So then array x, so array x is going to be like the array, let's say it has, the array or list has like 6 items, you know, x starts at 0, and the first item in the list is index is always 0. Then increase, and then the next item, which is the second item, is 1, so on and so forth, and it changes, and the .inner HTML changes it to Sololearn for each of those paragraphs. All right. Oh, dang it. Okay, well, you get this one free too. What's the output of this code? So it's got the ID test with paragraph, some text inside. Then we run the script, get element by ID test. So we got this, and it's going to alert the element if the element has child nodes, and it does because it has this paragraph as a child. So it's going to return true. All right. Oh, wait, I almost did it again. Okay, take a second to answer the next one. More water, I'll be right back. Okay, so the next one, drag and drop from the options below to change the color of the paragraph with ID P2 to red. So document get element by ID P2, D, which is this variable here, dot style, dot color equals red. All right, go ahead and answer the next question.
Hey, Brandon, on the example you have on your screen there with get element ID and then styling within the script.
Yeah.
So I can see you can style on HTML, you can style with CSS, and I now see you can style with something like JavaScript.
Right.
If you were to do like an on-click event handler or listener, whatever that would be called,
Yeah.
for like a button, like say you made it just a simple web page and then the button said press me, and every time you click the button it would change the background color. Would that just be like a simple script like that? You would just create an array of available colors and then like math.random in them? Would that do it?
Well, you'd need to do more than just math.random, but yes. You do math.random and then times 10 and then the ceiling.
Oh, okay.
But long story short, yes. And you'd also, I mean, you need to do more than just that because you'd have to have at least so many in your list. But anyway, long story short, yes, you could do that.
Okay.
All right. So the next one, can you handle multiple events on the same HTML element? Yes. And go ahead and answer the next one. Okay, fill in the blanks. To alert a message when the button is clicked, button on click, which is the one you'll probably use the most. Then it just calls this function and function message alert high. Okay, go ahead and answer the next one. Okay, display an alert when the mouse pointer is over the div tag, div mouse over alert high. And like with mouse over, like you were talking about, Mike, about changing the color and stuff, like you could do like on mouse over, like when you hover over a div or whatever, maybe it changes the color, like the translucency or opacity or whatever.
And you can also you can also do that with the pseudo class in HTML of like, or not pseudo class of HTML, but a pseudo class of CSS, like the pseudo class of hover. Would that be the same thing?
Like the pseudo elements, yeah, like on hover, yeah. It would
Okay.
be like the
So
same.
there's lots and lots of ways to skin lots of cats with coding, huh?
Are we supposed to know that code already? On mouse over?
Yeah, we covered it.
Yeah, we just
did?
learned it.
It was one of the events like on click that we learned.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Missed it.
Well, you could look back. What's speaking of skinning cats, is my mom's allergic to cats, and this is her favorite cat joke. She said, "How do you skin a cat?" Or no, how do you kill a cat? Bury it up to its neck and mow the lawn. So horrible, I know. All right. So next one, next one is done. So good. All right. So we'll do another vote. All in favor of stopping here and working on your CSS. Oh, also, if you haven't messaged me in the chat on your age, whether you're a member of the MOPH, and whether you're a Purple Heart recipient, a spouse of a veteran, or a veteran, or sorry, not just spouse, but family member of a Purple Heart recipient, or a veteran, please make sure you message me that in the chat. So let's take a vote. All in favor of stopping now and working on your CSS? Then go ahead and raise your hand. Oh, okay, that's majority. So that's what we'll do. So let me stop recording. I'll be right back.